Hello and welcome. You're watching the India Story with me, Vikram Chandra. A horrific crash involving 3 trains has become the deadliest railway accident in India in nearly 3 decades and has also made international headlines. With nearly 300 people dead and more than 1,000 injured, the tragedy has left the nation in shock and many worried about the overall safety of the train system. On this show, we take a look at what went wrong and who should be held responsible. We analyze the steps that have been taken for enhanced safety and try to answer the critical question: how can we ensure it doesn't happen again? Joining us will be Ravinder Gupta, the former Director General Safety of the Indian Railways, the person who was in charge of all of this till just a year or so ago. We're also joined by Prempal Sharma, former Executive Director of the Indian Railway Board. Also on the program today, the Indian Law Commission has recommended the reinstatement of the sedition law, but with some amendments. We speak to Satyapal Jain, the Additional Solicitor General of India and a former member of the Law Commission, to understand the recommendations and what is likely to happen now, what is the future of the controversial sedition law. We also have a special interview right here in the studio with senior journalist and author Jupinderjeet Singh, who will be discussing his latest book, Who Killed Moosewala? The book, of course, explores the murder and the subsequent investigation of one of the rising superstars of Punjabi hip-hop, Sidhu Moosewala, who was, of course, fatally shot in May last year. All of this and much more on the program, but let's first take a look at the major headlines. Gandhi's assassination by Khalistani separatists in Brampton warns that Canada's indulgence of such glorification will not be good for bilateral ties. Worst train accident in India in 20 years. For the past week, India and the world has been watching in dread scenes of destruction that have unfolded and the stories of terrible grief and trauma flowing out of Balasore in Odisha after that collision between 3 trains. A video apparently shot just seconds before the crash has illustrated the horror. Here's a look at what exactly occurred at 7 p.m. on June the 2nd, and also what has happened since in the investigation.
3 trains, more than 2,000 passengers, and within a matter of minutes, unimaginable destruction. The Coromandel Express hit a goods train standing on the loop line situated next to the main rail track. Coromandel Express's coaches derailed and hit a super-fast express passing by on parallel track. At least 288 people have died so far, while around 1,100 were injured. While details of the circumstances leading up to the crash are yet to be officially revealed, some information has emerged. Authorities suspect that there was manual interference with the electronic interlocking safety system. Due process may have been flouted to give a green signal to Coromandel Express, which erroneously entered the loop line instead of the main line. However, a member of the Railway Inquiry Panel has reportedly disagreed with the finding that a signal error occurred. The investigation into the triple train crash has been handed to the CBI amid suspicion that it could be a case of sabotage. Meanwhile, the ordeal continues for families of those killed in the accident. Around 80 bodies remained unidentified by June 7th. with authorities trying everything from artificial intelligence to SIM card triangulation and DNA testing to make sure that the remains are handed over to the grieving relatives.
A horrible, horrible disaster, tremendous trauma and suffering. There can be no excuse. Those responsible have to be identified, and we have to make sure it never happens again. But let's also now try and turn our question to the bigger question that many have been asking. What is the overall status of railway safety in India? Many steps have been taken. Have they been successful? What still needs to be done? Now, let's just try and take a look at the big picture. In the last 10 years now, there have been 10 major train accidents in India, which killed approximately 600 people. Now, many would say that this needs to be put into perspective because around 3 lakh people die in road accidents every year in India, as per the WHO. In fact, in financial years 2020 and 21, the Indian Railways actually recorded 0 passenger deaths in train mishaps classified as consequential or serious. So that data does need to be kept in mind. It also has to be kept in mind that such accidents declined from 104 in 2016-17 to 22 in 2021. So it would be a fact that the Indian Railways have become safer. Of course, very difficult to be taking any solace from that and comfort in that in a week when we've just had one of the worst disasters ever, when we've seen those scenes of tremendous trauma and tremendous suffering. But so clearly, even now, the question has to be, whatever efforts have been made, how do we make sure that those can be improved? And how do we make sure that even a single incident like this can never happen again? What do we need to do? How do we find what happened? And how do we modernize the railway network further? So let's start by taking a look at the positive news. In the budget for the current year, the Railways has allocated a record amount of 2.4 lakh crore rupees for capital expenditure. That's a lot of money and a hike of 75% over last year. The electronic interlocking safety systems were installed in more than 2,800 stations by October last year. Every year, 4,500 kilometers of new tracks are being laid, 8,000 kilometers of tracks are being upgraded. All of this was stated by the Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnav in February. On the modernization front, 75 state-of-the-art Vande Bharat trains will be running by August, and the government plans to modernize more than 1,200 railway stations. Work has already begun on nearly 50. India is also getting a $245 million loan from the World Bank to modernize the freight rail infrastructure. However, amid all of this good work, it cannot be denied that there's also been major shortcomings, especially related to safety. And these have been highlighted by none other than the government's auditor, the CAG. Let's take a look at what the CAG found when it analyzed rail accidents between April 2017 and March 2021. It said train derailments were behind 69% of the 2017 serious and other accidents. It said 163 of the 217 serious train accidents were due to derailments. The condition of rail tracks was a major factor in derailment in as many as 1,129 cases between FY19 and FY20. It said that funds allotted for track renewal fell, and even the allocated funds were not being fully used. Meanwhile, a Rashtriya Rail Sanraksha Kosh for critical safety work remained somewhat underfunded. There was approximately 15,000 crore rupees deficit in the funding for this. The CAG said there was a severe shortfall in the inspection of track conditions. The track monitoring system in a web application was non-operational. It also said that there was a shortage of the staff needed for track maintenance. So all that debate has been running. Are we spending enough money on safety? Is there the right priority? Should we be thinking more of safety or thinking more of new trains? That entire debate has actually been happening. Now, in response to that CAG report, government sources had said that the auditor's report did not have data up to financial year 2022. The officials said that the railways had spent more than 1 lakh crore rupee on safety work under the Sanraksha Kosh between April 2017 and March 2022. It also said that 58,000 crore rupees was spent on track renewal during this period. So as I said, all of this debate and discussions and claims and counterclaims over the question of whether we are spending enough money and enough attention on safety systems, which of course is what is used by the Indian Railways to prevent mishaps. But the other big question, and that is really the question that we need to turn our attention on right now, the specific systems that are already in place. Are those okay? Are those state of the art? Are those among the best in the world? And as perhaps turned out in this case, is there the possibility of human error when it comes to those systems? Human error caused by sabotage, human error caused by carelessness, human error caused perhaps by some boss saying, allow the trains to go, don't do enough testing, what are you doing? And a person there gives into that pressure, and the result is a fatal accident than this. That, of course, is the question that we need to turn our attention to. And let's start with the electronic interlocking system. This, of course, was apparently at the heart and at the root of what happened in Odisha. Now, the interlocking system manages red and green signals, of course, but critically, it also manages the track change points. It's because of this system and something that went wrong out here that particular train, the Coromandel Express, was diverted to the loop line. In brief, the electronic interlocking system is supposed to prevent trains from running on the same track at the same time. And if it is doing something wrong, if by some mistake there is an error out there, it is supposed to be fail-safe. It is supposed to flash up a red light. It is not supposed to allow the trains to run at all. What happened in Odisha should not have happened. Why did it happen then? It appears, from the basis of preliminary inquiries, that the system could have been manually overridden. Manually overridden. Somebody overrode the system, and as a result of that, that Coromandel Express went into the wrong side, but the signals remained green. That's what happened. That's why 300 people died. That's why so many people were injured. Now, why did that happen? We're going to be discussing in some detail in a couple of minutes. We also need to look at some of the future systems that are coming. One of the most talked about systems that are now going to be launched in India is, of course, Kavach. Now, this indigenous technology uses RFID readers, which are state-of-the-art readers and technology that will essentially alert nearby trains within an 850 megahertz range. It is basically meant to prevent collisions with auto braking. It will also give alerts about signal jumping and overspeeding by train drivers. Now, this is being gradually rolled out. It will take time before the entire Indian railway system has this. And it was clearly not installed on the Coromandel Express. And that's also why this happened. A third piece of technology that is now coming into the entire railway safety system is the anti-collision device, which essentially uses GPS to detect nearby trains and also prevents high-speed crashes by automatically applying brakes. Now, this, of course, has also only been installed on some trains of the Northeast Frontier Railway. So all of this technology is being rolled out. Some of it is in place, like the electronic interlocking system. Some is not yet in place, like Kavach everywhere, or some of those anti-collision systems. Now, obviously, the Odisha tragedy has put pressure on the government to act quickly. And that's also the question that we're going to now try to address. What can be done to make sure it doesn't happen again? Now, clearly, money does not seem to be a problem. India's got enough money. There's a lot of money also allocated in the budget. And yes, there may be a lack of manpower, lack of training in some places. And it's a very large train network, a very diverse train network. And that does make changes difficult to implement and to roll out very fast. To help shed light on this, to understand what could have possibly happened in Balasore and to see what can be done to make sure that something like this never happens again. Who better to speak to than Mr. Ravindra Gupta, the former Director General Safety of the Indian Railways, who retired just a year ago and therefore has a very clear idea about the present safety systems and what could have possibly gone wrong in this case. Mr. Gupta, thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Now, you were Director General of Railway Safety till just a short while back, so therefore you understand the system. This is a very emotional time for all of us. Everyone's trying to understand what could have possibly gone wrong. What is your understanding? Was there something wrong with the system? Was there something wrong, human error in how that system was used? What went wrong?
You see, what went wrong? To learn that exactly takes a deep, detailed inquiry. For what appears very simplistic explanation, at the back end lies a very detailed sequence of events which makes such a thing happen. In a very nutshell and summary, as everybody has heard, what went wrong is that a train was given through signal on one line. It's the other train was given through signal. Through signal means permission to pass through the station without stopping. So when that happens, a very basic requirement is that a train gets signals, and signaling is not traffic lights. It's not green, yellow, start, wait. It is a language, like a Morse code. So when a driver sees signals in a sequence, he understands what it means. So the message before the drivers, both of them, both the crews, was that the next station is clear, signals are through, next block section is clear. And for this train running at 1:30, he also knew the next station is also clear. So there was no doubt in his mind where he's going. He was going on a through line, and it was a perfect normal day of operation. Stations have signals, and number is quite large. These, like every other equipment, these do fail. In this also, see, this was my personal suspicion from the day one. The moment I learnt about it and heard about the lay of the accident, I realized there's no doubt it's a collision. It's not a side collision. Number two, time slot will tell when and why the other train collided. So that also became clear that the train was also passing through. It was a simultaneous kind of same time slot operation. Why did the straight going train turn to a loop line? System remained blind to it. System did not know. So one small digression at this point. If the system is so designed, the automatic system, if it knows something is failing, it fails on a safe side. It stops train movement. It takes train to a less harmful line. So all that happens.
Mr. Gupta, if I could just understand what you've said so that all the viewers are very clear on this. Both the train drivers had got signals saying it was going to be clear for literally dozens of kilometers in front. The entire route is clear. The entire block is clear. Keep going.
Yes.
Okay. And the train was then told to go into the loop system where it crashed with the goods train, and the system for some reason did not reflect it. None of the signals, none of them reflected the fact that the train is actually going into the loop line instead of going straight. That essentially is what happened, and that's why so many people died.
So the question arises, why did the system not know? The core question was, why did the system not know? Every railway expert who heard about this accident would have thought that this has happened. And why did the system? This is the matter of investigation. So initial investigations, my knowledge is based on what I read in newspapers. It says that there was a repair going on. There was a manual repair by which, in course of which, there was a non-interlocking of the system. What happens is when you repair a system, you remove the interlocks and you remove the safety so that you can repair and test. Otherwise, the system won't permit you to test. So in this case, I would understand very briefly that somebody repaired the system, did not carry out the mandatory procedure, and did not carry out the mandatory testing before restoring. In the rush of traffic, momentary decision, I can say that you appoint some security personnel to guard yourself, and one day, because of their urgency and stress, they shoot a normal person instead of shooting a enemy. So something like that happens in a system.
So essentially, someone would have been there repairing the system on the ground. This is an automatic system. It's now had manual intervention, and then they switch it back to automatic without actually testing to see if everything is okay. And that's where the error came in. That's where the tragedy originated from. That's essentially what you're summing up for us.
No, I do not know. If it is not switched back to automatic, if the system was kicked in, system would have realized the fault. System did not realize fault, means it was still blind. So therefore, it appears to me, detailed investigation may say, it does not rule out. I'm not saying that I'm ruling out sabotage or any willing action. There is a lot of inquiry going on. CBI is in the field. So they will find out why and How this person did it is one question. Why did he do it? Was it a benign action of trying to repair and not following procedure and getting caught in that chance? Or is it that there was a willful action? This is a matter of detailed investigation. I won't hazard a conjecture on this issue.
So, Mr. Gupta, let's assume it was not a deliberate accident or sabotage of some sort. Why then would it have happened? Could it be also that there's pressure on those linesmen, there's pressure on the people working on the ground, keep the tracks running, keep the rail running, a major expresses are coming, jaldi se repair karo and put the system back online. Is that what sometimes leads to accidents like this or tragedies like this?
See, Indian Railways is at 24/7. A lot of people say that our system is 24/7. That's all in paper and theory and sometimes in a server. But Indian Railways is at 24/7 on the physical ground. It never stops. It is not waiting and watching for someone. It is working, doing things which make things happen. So it's a working, actionable system. In such a system, there's very little margin for failures and then repairing. Because for every see, infrastructure is redundant, but it is not so redundant that you can have tolerate a failure without consequence. Consequence not in terms of accident, in terms of loss of performance, losing a train, waiting, making passengers wait. These keep on happening, and as we know on system, a lot of times when you're traveling by train, somebody tells you, "Oh, system is red, the signal is red, and it is waiting." You wait for some time, and then something happens, and you move on. So everybody curses the train got delayed by half an hour, whereas it should have been in time. But point is that in a 24/7 system, there will be some fault tolerance, there will be some failures which will occur, and there will be systems in place. It's a matter of training and discipline in the system that you tell people that you will follow procedures. Now, alongside, there is one very important aspect which comes to my mind, and is very personal opinion which I express. It is that ultimately in the system, we have to realize who's the expert. So there is a degree of respect which needs to flow in the system. Urgency, performance pressures are okay, but the man on the field has to have that confidence that if he has said no to it, he will not be overruled. And as a safety in charge, everywhere, all safety in charges, they insist, follow the rule, make the workman follow the rule, and if workman is following the rule, you obey it.
That is a really, really important point that you're making, sir. And that actually is followed in other areas, in airlines and others. For example, if someone says do not fly, nobody ever flies. Now, I'm going to put you the bigger question, though. As somebody who's been Director General, Rail Safety, are we as a country investing all the money, taking all the steps that we need to do when it comes to railway safety? Is it a high enough priority? And are we putting enough effort into making sure that our trains are completely safe? Look, I know what many in the government are saying, no matter how good your systems are, there can be errors, there can be mistakes. But are we doing enough to make sure that safety is the #1 priority?
See, the Indian Railways is a very large system, 68,000 odd kilometers, another 3,000 kilometers of other gauges, variety of terrains, forests, hills, deserts, rivers, bridges. It's a very diverse and a very big system. There are bigger systems in terms of length, but diversity of terrain, diversity of users is phenomenal. In such a system, to keep similar standards all over is not a very easy task. So whenever you introduce an improvement, it is not switching on a bulb on and off. Railways have invested money in track. We have invested money on the bridges. We have invested money on the level crossings. We have invested money on interlocking. We have invested money on improving signaling, PI and EI all over the system, eliminating manual signaling. So system is progressing, and we are far more advanced than large number of railway systems.
So the question that, Mr. Gupta, many in the public have been asking, given all of that, given the fact that there's an accident like this that shakes people's confidence, at the end of the day, what would you tell the people watching this? Is it safe to travel by the Indian Railways? Are enough steps being taken? You must have seen the reports also that in February somebody actually wrote a letter saying there are problems with the system, something like this could actually happen, you need to be very careful about this. All of those reports are also circulating. So what would you tell the public? Should they feel safe or no?
Yeah, traveling by trains, if you compare statistics, I won't give you figures, but I'll give you the impression of those figures. We are safer than almost all railways across the world if you check the accident statistics. We are. That means our ability to stop maintenance faults to convert into a safety event, we are pretty good. It's a very intensive system. High sides of this accident, apart from loss of life, is that the coaches withstood a kind of collision which they wouldn't have. If earlier design coaches were there, this accident is some absolute rare thing. In past, never in Indian Railways history, never, I can say without any doubt, a 128-kilometer traveling train has hit into a stationary obstacle.
Mr. Ravinder Gupta, former Director General Safety at the Indian Railways, thank you so much for joining us to really help us understand what could have possibly gone wrong. But let's just get another viewpoint on this terrible tragedy. Mr. Prempal Sharma is joining us, former Executive Director of the Indian Railway Board. Thank you so much for joining us. You've got some chance, sir, to analyze and understand all that has happened. What's your own sense of what went wrong in this case and what can be done to make sure it doesn't happen again?
I think it will be too early to speculate on that. But one conclusion I have reached, if you won't mind the tragedy is very apparent. Those who are asking for resignation, that debate I will not into that because this kind of politics is a part of the democracy. Let them. Now, my suggestion or my impression is now we must review our all policies. And all policies, when I say I'm retired railwayman, but I'm part of this country. The system is collapsing, whether it's the institutions of education or any other, but I will focus only on the railways. So now what I'm saying, that review should be there of our policies, that now instead of going for the fast train, the rushing for the Vande Bharat, bullet is only one part of that. So until unless we are ready for that, and when we say we are ready for that, infrastructure means the railway track.
So if I could just interrupt you, I think what you're saying is obviously clear. I think nobody would disagree with that. Railway safety has to be the first priority and only then should anything else come. But we have been discussing railway safety for 60 years, 70 years. Now, what seems to have gone wrong in this case, human error, somebody overriding the system, whether by sabotage or whether deliberately. How do you guard against something like that? I mean, how do you make sure that that never happens?
कदम बहुत सारे उठाए गए हैं, मैं ये नहीं लेकिन मैं फिर भी कहूंगा कि और भी ज्यादा उठाने की जरूरत है। जब हम इलेक्ट्रॉनिक एज की तरफ जा रहे हैं, स्पीड 150 प्लस करना चाहते हैं, छोटे शहरों को जोड़ना चाहते हैं, तो पुराने सेफ्टी के जो मेजर्स थे 150 साल से ज्यादा भी रेलवे के सेफ्टी के बहुत सारे पैरामीटर्स बदले हैं। रेलवे उन दिनों की स्पीड अलग थी, आज की अलग है, फैसिलिटीज अलग है।
So at the end of the day, given that human intervention in some form or the other was the key in this, do you think the systems in present are designed in a manner that human error can be avoided? Do we need to move towards greater technology to make sure that neither is sabotage possible, nor is human overriding always possible? I guess at some point or the other, humans will have to be involved, right, in fixing the system if something goes wrong. But do we rely more on technology now? Should we rely more on technology and therefore reduce the possibility of human error?
Because ultimately, I feel the technology is very important, machine is very important, but somehow the man is also equally important. Somebody will have to rectify. So these are the questions, and what I feel with a full of tears in my eye, now at least this minister or this railway, though I not have no the courage of defending that, but they must and they should do. Whole ministry priority should be focused on such kind of activity. Even if we have to cut our expenditure, our pension, our DA, our 5-star facilities, because that I'm part of that. The upper class of railway officers, they are always in search of the best facilities. They will change their room, their floor, their telephone, all facilities they will ask, but they will never care for the last man.
All right, sir, Mr. Prempal Sharma, thank you so much for joining us and shedding some light on this terrible tragedy. Let's turn our attention now to what the foreign media has been saying about India, and perhaps not surprisingly, there were lots and lots of references to that particular train crash out there in The Independent, for example, article about how distressed family members of the victims in the Odisha train crash are facing the requirement of DNA testing before being able to claim the bodies of their loved ones. The UK's Independent reported on the ongoing challenges being faced by some of those affected families. Time magazine interviewed many experts who pointed out that while the Indian government has spent a lot on the railways, a lot of focus has been there on speed and comfort through the introduction of new trains. They spoke to some experts who emphasized the need for greater efforts to enhance the safety of older trains that are still in operation. They all pointed out, of course, that India has one of the largest railway networks anywhere in the world. And so they highlighted the challenge of limited time for routine maintenance activities, as may have affected things in this case. The Financial Times spoke about all the investments that have gone into Indian railways. They said while the length of electrified railway lines in India has increased significantly since 2014, they said that some critics argue that the focus on infrastructure may not adequately address the safety concerns until there is improved capacity and qualifications among railway personnel responsible for safety. So they said that more focus has to go on there. And a slightly different story there in Japan Times, looking at population, saying that China and India have fewer people than the United Nations thinks. The report published in the Japan Times has questioned the reliability of the United Nations population projections, particularly regarding India and China. The report says that India's 2024 census will likely reveal a smaller population than projected due to declining fertility rates, driven by improvements in health, education, and contraception. Nearly a year after India's Supreme Court stayed all litigation under the sedition law, the Law Commission has released its latest report recommending the retention of the provision. However, it suggests introducing procedural safeguards, but also suggested that the jail term should actually be increased. The Law Commission argued that these measures are necessary to combat anti-national and subversive elements. Now, these recent recommendations on the sedition law have once again brought this age-old rule into the spotlight. There has been so much debate on this over several years. Many people saying that it needed to be scrapped. Many people saying that it can and is often misused in many places. We're going to turn to that debate, but first let's understand the reasons that the Law Commission has given for retaining the provision and how the Law Commission thinks it can actually be strengthened.
In its recent report, India's Law Commission has recommended 3 changes to the sedition law. First, it suggests incorporating the rationale of the Kedarnath ruling into the provision by including the words "with a tendency to incite violence or cause public disorder." Second, the Commission proposes enhancing the punishment for sedition to remove an anomaly. Section 124A presently carries a prison term of up to 3 years or life imprisonment. The report suggests increasing the maximum sentence to 7 years or life imprisonment. Third, in order to prevent misuse of the law, the report recommends the inclusion of a procedural safeguard. It suggests that no first information report should be registered for sedition unless a police officer conducts a preliminary inquiry. The permission of the central or state government would be required based on the report of the said police officer. Despite facing criticism from opposition parties, the Law Commission has provided reasons for retaining the provision. The Commission argues that safeguarding the unity and integrity of India is crucial, pointing out internal security threats such as Maoist extremism, militancy, and ethnic conflicts in the Northeast. The law body also asserts that sedition, being a colonial legacy, is not a valid ground for its repeal.
Well, those are, of course, the recommendations of the Law Commission. We have to now see what the government is going to do and then what the courts are going to do. So, for more on that, we're now being joined by Mr. Satyapal Jain, Additional Solicitor General of India, someone who's been a member of the Law Commission as well, and, of course, someone who's one of our most respected legal minds. Mr. Jain, thank you so much, sir, for joining us. I just wanted to get your sense of what the Law Commission has said on sedition, because clearly, This has been a very controversial law, something that's been debated for years, if not decades, something that many people has often been misused to, sort of strike against free speech or against dissent. What's your sense of what the Law Commission has said?
See, you are right. For the last so many years, especially after the matter went to Supreme Court in May 2022 last year, this matter has come again for discussion in the public domain. The Supreme Court itself expressed its opinion that this issue should be deliberated upon. Supreme Court stayed all the proceedings under 124A in all the courts in India last year. And the matter has now been examined and the report has been submitted by the Law Commission of India. As you know, Law Commission practically is not a statutory body. It's a body which has evolved over the years, and all the courts, Supreme Court, High Courts, they refer to the reports by the Law Commission. First thing I wish to say is this, that the recommendation of the Law Commission of India are the recommendations of the Law Commission. They are yet to pass the scrutiny of the government, parliament, subcommittees, standing committees, etc. In a sense, I feel that the Law Commission has taken one step further in the field of having wider discussion on the sedition law. This is what the Supreme Court also wanted.
So sir, just to understand what you're saying that the Law Commission, whatever it says, its recommendations, these are clearly not binding recommendations and are not necessarily what the government will eventually want to do, or for that matter, what the Supreme Court will eventually want to do. It is an input into the process. Would that be a correct way of looking at it?
Yes, see, not only the government. First, the Law Commission recommendation goes to the Government of India. The Government of India examines it. Suppose the Government of India agrees or disagrees or they want to take it further, then it will go to the Parliament. Parliament will ultimately send it to the Standing Committee. Standing Committee consists of representatives from all the political parties. Again, it will come to the Parliament, and if any amendment has to be made, 124 will be amendment in the Indian Penal Code. This can be done only by both the houses of Parliament. So in a way, the point which I put up earlier, it's a good step, one step forward in the field of having larger consultation, larger participation by different groups, different ideas, in the ultimately going to a law which has the least controversies as much possible as possible.
I think you're right, sir. Of course, the more you debate, the more you discuss, the more you're likely to come up with a positive solution. Now, one of the things that do come out from what the Law Commission has said, for example, Law Commission says you should not do away with tradition just because it is a colonial law. You shouldn't do away with the law just because it's a colonial law. Now, people may debate that because they will say that a colonial system has certain repressive measures which do not really have a place in a democracy. In a free country or a democracy, you don't need some of the repressive measures that are there in a colonial system.
You see, so far as the first argument is concerned, simply by saying that it is a rule or law enacted during colonial rule, if we have to strike down all laws, I am afraid as a lawyer, how many laws you will have to repeal? The entire Indian Penal Code. The entire Indian Penal Code was enacted during the British rule. There are many laws which were enacted there. Simply because it has been enacted during the colonial rule is no ground to strike it down. Number two, see, the section has stood the scrutiny of the constitutional bench of the Supreme Court in Kedarnath Singh's case in 1962. You know, Allahabad High Court had declared it null and void. So a law which has already stood the scrutiny of the Supreme Court, which has already stood the testimony of different courts, and which has once again been reiterated by the Law Commission, will again be open to discussion and debate in Parliament, and both sides' opinions will be available for taking a final decision.
All right, so one part of what you're saying is don't repeal a law just because it was passed in British times, but one of the other things that comes up is that shouldn't these laws be defined a little bit more specifically and more precisely so that they cannot be misused, they cannot be used for harassment, for example, there can't be fake cases filed in there, just to harass people because those provisions are there. That is something which if it's a very loosely worded clause or very loosely worded provisions, that is something that is possible. So does it need to be defined in a far more rigorous manner? Actual incitement to violence, actual violence is committed, mens rea in some form.
Yes, I am personally of the view, number one, that this law must retain the law book. You cannot go away. You cannot get away with it. I am of the view, personal view, that the law must remain. Number two, so far as the definitions are concerned, even Kedarnath Singh's case, even the Law Commission has recommended that these things should be clearly specified. Two, three things. Number one, what will be the actually sedition? Intention, they have suggested the intention to incite violence, etc., etc. Number two, see, the biggest guarantee in the law is first, the clarity by the executive, the parliament, legislature to define the law. Second is the implementation by the investigating agencies. How do an inspector or a police constable or head constable visualizes it and he analyzes it? Third will be the courts, which will ultimately decide whether you are guilty or not. I think these three mechanisms, if they are taken in the logical end, I think ultimately something concrete will come. The argument which is given by many people that since there is a possibility or apprehension of misuse of this clause, so it should be repealed. Once again, I will say as a lawyer, if any apprehension of any law likely to be misused or abused is an argument to strike down the law, I'm afraid there will not be even a single law in the country which has not been misused.
Yeah. So would you agree that one of the simplest ways of ensuring that laws like this cannot, or any other law cannot be misused, is that there should be some accountability? If somebody actually misuses a law, for example, the sedition laws are used against somebody who was not committing sedition, ended up going to prison, was locked up for 5 years, 10 years. Later, it turns out that that law was actually misused by somebody. The way to handle that is then there should be accountability. There has to be something in jurisprudence which says if you misuse a law, there will be consequences, you will be punished. And if that happens, then the chances of misuse also go down. The probability of misuse certainly goes down.
Already in the law, there is a provision for prosecuting any person for malicious prosecution. If somebody involves you falsely, after your acquittal or after that, you can move for the malicious prosecution. You can go for the damages. You can go for other remedies also. They are already available, but no harm. If in such a law you make a provision for taking action against those who falsely implicate you. But I'll say, I believe in the independence of the judiciary, and before concluding, I'll give you 3-4 examples, short. Number one, it is the independence of the Indian judiciary that a single judge of the Allahabad High Court set aside the election of the sitting Prime Minister of India, which example you will not find in the entire world. Number two, a 5-judges constitution bench of the Supreme Court struck down the National Judicial Appointment Commission Act, which was passed unanimously by the parliament. All parties, all MPs, 900 MPs had voted for that. It was struck down by the Supreme Court, 4-1, everybody accepted it. In the case of Mr. Navjot Singh Sidhu, after 34 years of incident, last year he was sentenced to go 1 year's imprisonment. I have all regard for him. I'm not at all criticizing him, but I'm telling you, the independence of the Indian judiciary is the biggest guarantee to avoid any misuse or abuse of the law.
All right, Mr. Satyapal Jain, Additional Solicitor General of India, thank you so much, sir, for joining us for that. Let's see now what the government makes of the recommendations of the Law Commission and what finally happens with this somewhat controversial law. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Thank you. And finally, let's now speak to senior journalist and author Jupinderjeet Singh on his latest book, Who Killed Moosewala? Thank you so much for joining us right here in the studio. I have the book out here, Spiraling Story of Violence in Punjab. So let's start with that first question. Who killed Moosewala? What was behind it? What have you been able to figure out?
Yeah, that's a big question. Moosewala was killed 29th of May, 2022. And police has, as per their investigation, police is saying that Lawrence Bishnoi gang had conspired and executed that killing. But this theory is not totally convincing and believed. And that is what my book is about. What are the other theories? Who was Moosewala? What were the issues with his life? What were his songs about? So,
I'll come to the second bits in a couple of minutes, but let's come back to the first point. So you're saying that the entire theory around, I'm not going to ask you to tell everything in the book because I assume you want people to read it, but you're saying that the theory that there was criminal gangs and Lawrence Bishnoi and all of that, there are still some question marks around that.
Yes. Yeah, it is, because you look at Lawrence Bishnoi. He is the only inmate in Punjab jails, I think, ever in its history who has been interviewed There are two back-to-back media interviews about a guy who is threatening cine star Salman Khan. And he has such access that he is giving media interviews. And those interviews, it is almost 3 months since those interviews were aired. And Punjab police is yet to figure out that how those interviews were conducted, where those interviews were conducted, how did he got access to phone in a high security jail, and so because of his influence and because of so many questions surrounding the murder, I firmly believe that there are some forces who were behind this. It doesn't start and it doesn't end with Lawrence Bishnoi. It doesn't start and end with gang war.
So you've also been writing about a lot of the other connections, right? You'd written about Amritpal also at the time he was coming. The entire linkages that are there in countries like Canada, for example, and the influence from there about what's happening in violence in Punjab. Is there sort of a network behind all of this?
Yeah, of course. Moosewala's killing, there are as many as 60 accused. As per the police findings, there have been, these 60 people came together to carry out this killing. Everyone did know that the target was Moosewala. Some of them knew the target was Moosewala, but they didn't know that he is going to be murdered. So police has on its charge sheet, they have listed 31 accused, out of which 25 were arrested, 2 were eliminated in a police encounter, Manu Kusa and Jagrup Rupa. 4 are in foreign countries. And out of those, the prominent one is Goldie Brar, who was the first to claim responsibility. The orders were given by Lawrence Bishnoi, but he was the one who hatched the entire conspiracy.
Okay.
And he is in Canada. So Canada is, is the safe
Well, I mean,
haven.
the influence of Canada in violence, we were just seeing, for example, that glorification of Indira Gandhi's assassinations in Brampton. Same area which Moosewala, of course, came from. A lot of you written out here about his life itself. Shed some lights on that, from Brampton, from influence from Brampton, Canada, accused of glorifying gun culture. What did you find out about Moosewala while you were writing this?
Yeah, that's a very important question. Basically, I enter the scene on the day of murder, after the murder only. Before that, I had heard his songs, but there was no analysis or some kind of interpretation of his songs. So this book is essentially a crime reporter's account. And this is my 6th book. Earlier, I had done 5 books, one of which was on discovery of Shahid Bhagat Singh's pistol. It was missing for 80 years, which I found, it was in Indore, but that's a separate story and a separate book. And so, so this story actually goes kind of backwards, not in a typical timeline, but trying to understand Moosewala the singer, Moosewala the person,
no, so what
Moosewala the politician.
What did you find about that? So when you're looking at his backstory and you're looking at who Moosewala was, where he came from Brampton, from Canada, all those illusions of violence that many people did refer to, glorification of gun culture, what all did you pick up as part of that?
Yeah, much of it I would like that people read my book,
read and
figure it out. But on the surface of it, he is a typical Punjabi youth who is born and brought up in a village. 60%, 70% of Punjabis are from villages. The dream is to get some qualification. If it is a specialized qualification like engineering or medical or something, that is, or otherwise do 10+2, clear the IELTS and go to Canada or to England. But main target of Punjabis is Canada, So that was also Moosewala's life. He belongs to one of the most backward districts of Punjab, which is Mansa district, and his village is Musa. That's how he gets his name, Moosewala. And so he is also a typical Punjabi youth, but he's fond of music, and he find his, I think he find his life's goal in music when he is studying engineering. And then he moves to Canada, get in touch, is exposed to international technology. And since childhood, he somehow, he is listening to Tupac Shakur, the American rap singer, who is also murdered in the same way, and whose killers have also not been arrested yet. He was murdered in 1996. So Moosewala followed him, and kind of he also lived the life similar to Tupac Shakur. Yeah. Moosewala, the person, you will find that a very shy person, very unlike what you see in his music videos, where is, shooting guns, and firing from guns, and he's like this hyper masculinity you see in him.
So the private persona and the public persona were very different.
Yeah, totally 360-degree difference. He was very shy. He really rarely used to speak or anything.
All right, Shubhenderjeet Singh, thank you so much for joining us. Who killed Moosewala? We're going to wait to get the final answer to that particular question. Thank you so much for being with us. And that's all on this episode of The India Story. We're going to leave it there just for the moment. Do join us again next week with all the big stories out of India. Bye for now.